Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to unpack Tertullians against Valentinians.
Well, I know. Sounds a little dry, right?
A bit dusty, maybe?
But Tertullian is such an interesting and, how should I say, colorful character. And the Valentinians, well, let's just say, they were a fascinating bunch with some seriously out there beliefs.
Oh, yeah. We're going deep into early Christian history. Tertullian's writing in, what, like the 2nd, 3rd century AD?
Right around there, yeah. A time when Christianity was still figuring itself out, battling it out with all sorts of other philosophies and religious movements.
And these Valentinians, they were Gnostics, right?
Yeah, so they believed in gnosis, the special kind of knowledge, as the key to salvation.
And Tertullian, well, he wasn't a big fan of that whole Gnostic thing.
Nope, not at all. He saw them as, well, kind of like heretics. They were twisting the true Christian message with all their talk of secret knowledge and elaborate myths.
So this is a deep dive into a deep dive. We're not just looking at Tertullian's critique, we're also going to explore the Valentinian beliefs that he's arguing against.
That's right. It's like trying to solve a puzzle. You've got to look at all the pieces to see how they fit together.
Okay, so let's start with the Valentinians. Give us the lowdown. Who were these guys?
Well, the Valentinians were part of this broader Gnostic movement. And Gnosticism, it's this kind of umbrella term for a whole bunch of different groups and ideas that were floating around in the early centuries of Christianity.
It's a bit like a spiritual smorgasbord, with everyone picking and choosing what they liked.
Yeah, kind of, but there are some common threads that run through Gnostic thought.
Right.
Well, for starters, they believed in this radical duality between the spiritual world and the material world. The spiritual world, that's pure, perfect, divine. The material world, well, it's basically flawed, corrupt, a prison for the soul.
Oof, that's a pretty bleak view of things, especially for those of us stuck in the material world.
Yeah, tell me about it. And that's where gnosis comes in. They believe that only through this special knowledge could you escape the material world and reunite with the divine.
Okay, but what kind of knowledge are we talking about here? Was it like secret passwords or hidden formulas?
Well, it's more than that. It's this deep, intuitive understanding of your true spiritual nature, of your connection to the divine. And the Valentinians, they had some very specific ideas about how this gnosis worked and what it entailed.
So they weren't just making this stuff up as they went along.
Oh, no. They had a whole elaborate system, a whole cosmology with all sorts of divine beings and cosmic dramas.
Okay, let's hear it. Break down this Valentinian worldview for us.
Okay, so imagine this. At the very top of everything, you have this ultimate source of all existence, this divine being called Bythos.
Bythos. Got it. And what's Bythos like?
Well, Bythos is often described as this unknowable depth, the ultimate ground of being beyond all comprehension. And get this, Bythos exists in perfect unity with this feminine counterpart called silence.
Bythos and silence. Quite the power couple.
Right. And from this primordial unity, from Bythos and silence, emanate a whole series of divine beings called eons.
Eons. So these are like, what, lesser gods or something?
You could think of them that way, yeah. They represent different aspects of the divine, different qualities or powers. And these eons, they exist in this perfect realm called the pleroma.
So the pleroma is kind of like a divine palace.
That's a great way to put it. It's this realm of pure spirit, of perfect harmony, where all these eons exist in perfect balance. It's like a cosmic dance of divine energies.
Sounds pretty idyllic.
It does, doesn't it? But here's where things get interesting, and this is where we get to the heart of the Valentinian myth.
Well, I'm all ears.
One of these eons, a female eon named Sophia, well, she gets a little too curious for her own good.
Uh-oh. Curiosity killed the cat, or in this case, maybe the eon.
Well, not exactly killed, but definitely sent tumbling down a cosmic rabbit hole. You see, Sophia, she had this intense desire to know Bythos directly.
That doesn't sound so bad. What's wrong with wanting to know the ultimate source of all existence?
Well, in the Valentinian system, it's a big no-no. Bythos is beyond comprehension, beyond direct experience. It's like trying to stare directly at the sun. You'll just burn your eyes out.
Okay, so Sophia overreached. What happened next?
Her yearning, her desire to know Bythos, it becomes this kind of cosmic imbalance. It creates this ripple effect throughout the pleroma. And Sophia, she's cast out of this perfect realm.
Ouch. Talk about a fall from grace. But wait, so how does this all tie into our world, the material world?
Well, that's where things get really wild. Sophia's fall, it doesn't just create some cosmic drama up there in the pleroma. It also sets in motion a chain of events that leads to the creation of our world.
Hold on, you're saying our world is like a cosmic accident, a byproduct of this eon's existential crisis.
In a way, yes. Sophia's emotions, her passions, her longing for Bythos, they become the building blocks of matter. And from this chaotic mix, a flawed creator god emerges. They called him the Demiurge.
The Demiurge. Okay, so this Demiurge, he's the one who creates our world.
That's right, but there's a catch. The Demiurge, he's completely ignorant of his true origins, clueless about the divine realm, the pleroma from which he ultimately sprang.
So we're stuck in a world created by a clueless god. That's, comforting.
Well, it gets even more complicated. The Demiurge, he creates humanity, but he creates them as these kind of imperfect reflections of the divine.
So we're like knockoff versions of the real deal.
In a sense, yes. And the Valentinians, they believed that trapped within each of us is a tiny spark of the divine, a fragment of that original eon, Sophia.
Okay, so there's hope for us yet.
Right, but here's the kicker. They believed that only through gnosis, through this special knowledge, could that divine spark be awakened and returned to the pleroma.
So it's not enough to just be a good person. You need this secret knowledge to escape the material world.
That's the Valentinian take on it, and this is where Tertullian really goes to town.
Okay, let's get into it. How does Tertullian counter these Valentinian ideas?
Well, first of all, he just flat out rejects this whole dualistic worldview, the idea that the material world is inherently bad and that the body is somehow separate from the soul.
So he's not buying into this idea that we need to escape the material world.
Nope, he's all about embracing the goodness of creation. He sees the body as an integral part of who we are, not some kind of prison for the soul.
That's a pretty radical idea for the time, isn't it?
Oh yeah, especially in a world where so many philosophies were all about transcending the physical realm. But Tertullian, he's grounded in the belief that God created the material world and that it's inherently good.
Okay, so he challenges their worldview. What about their emphasis on gnosis?
He's not a fan of that either. Remember, Tertullian is all about simplicity. He sees the Valentinian obsession with secret knowledge as a form of elitism.
Elitism.
Yeah, like they're creating this exclusive club where only a select few have access to the truth.
So it's not enough to just have faith in God. You need a VIP pass to get into heaven.
That's how Tertullian saw it. He believed that salvation is available to everyone, regardless of their intellectual capacity or social status.
It's about the heart, not the head.
Exactly. And Tertullian, he goes even further. He accuses the Valentinians of being arrogant, of thinking that they can figure out God through their own cleverness.
Ouch. That's a pretty harsh critique.
Yeah, well, Tertullian wasn't known for pulling his punches. He believed that true knowledge comes from God, not from our own limited human intellect.
So it's a matter of humility, of recognizing that we're not God.
That's a big part of it. Tertullian believed that we need to approach God with a sense of awe and wonder, not with a desire to dissect and analyze the divine.
Okay, so he takes issue with their worldview, their elitism, and their arrogance. What else does he have to say about the Valentinians?
Well, one of the most interesting points of contention is their creation myth.
You mean the ones Sophia the Demiurge?
That's the one. Remember, the Valentinians believed that our world was created as a result of Sophia's fall, and that the Demiurge is this clueless creator god who's ignorant of his true origins.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild story.
It is, and Tertullian, he has some serious problems with it. First of all, he challenges the idea that God could ever be ignorant of anything. He argues that God is omniscient, all-knowing, and that the Valentinian creation myth diminishes God's power and majesty.
So he's defending God's reputation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's also defending the goodness of creation. He rejects the Valentinian idea that the material world is somehow flawed or corrupt. He sees it as a beautiful and intricate tapestry woven by a loving God.
It's like he's saying that God wouldn't create something and then just abandon it to chaos and suffering.
Exactly. And this brings us back to Tertullian's belief in the resurrection of the body. He sees it as a testament to God's power and his desire to redeem all of creation.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of these ideas fit together. So for Tertullian, it's not about escaping the material world or seeking secret knowledge. It's about embracing the goodness of creation, having faith in a loving God, and trusting in his promise of resurrection.
You got it. That's Tertullian in a nutshell.
This has been so fascinating. I'm really starting to appreciate Tertullian's perspective. But I have to admit, I'm still a little confused about some of the finer points of his argument.
Yeah, he can be a little dense at times.
A little. But maybe we can unpack some of that in our next segment. So we've got Tertullian, champion of simple faith, going head-to-head with the Valentinians and their intricate cosmic system. But where do his critiques actually land? What are the real-world implications of this theological clash?
Well, one area where it gets really interesting is in how they each view the role of women.
Okay, how so?
Think about it. The Valentinians had Sophia, right? This powerful female eon whose quest for knowledge ultimately led to the creation of the material world. It's a complex story, but there's an underlying sense that women, represented by Sophia, have this inherent capacity for spiritual insight and wisdom.
So they're not exactly relegating women to the sideline.
Not in that creation myth, no. But when you look at their practices, things get a little murkier. There's evidence that some Valentinian communities allowed women to hold leadership roles, to teach and preach.
Which is pretty progressive for the time, right?
Oh, yeah, way ahead of the curve. But Tertullian, well, he had some very different views on women's place in the church and in society.
Let me guess, he wasn't exactly a feminist.
Not by today's standards, that's for sure. He had this whole thing about Eve being the temptress, the one who brought sin into the world. He saw women as inherently weaker than men, more susceptible to temptation and deception.
So not exactly a fan of women's leadership then.
No, he believed that women should be subservient to men, that their role was in the home, raising children, and supporting their husbands.
That's a pretty stark contrast to the Valentinian view, at least in some of their communities.
Yeah, it really highlights the diversity of thought within early Christianity. You've got these Gnostic groups like the Valentinians pushing the boundaries of traditional gender roles, and then you have figures like Tertullian upholding a more patriarchal view.
So this debate wasn't just about abstract theological concepts. It had real-world implications for how people live their lives and how society functioned.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why studying these early Christian debates is so fascinating. It's not just ancient history, it's a window into how people have grappled with some of the most fundamental questions about human existence. The nature of good and evil, the role of knowledge and faith, the meaning of salvation, and yes, even the roles of men and women in society.
And it's a reminder that these questions, they don't have easy answers.
Not at all. But I think that's okay. It's the wrestling, the questioning, the debating that helps us grow and evolve both individually and as a society.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on. We've delved deep into Tertullian's critique of the Valentinians, exploring their contrasting worldviews and the implications of their beliefs. We've uncovered a world of cosmic dramas, secret knowledge, and theological clashes, but most importantly, we've seen how these ancient debates continue to resonate with the questions we still grapple with today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.